peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Hari Om Tat Sat. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, Haima. Namaste, dear. We're studying Swami Prabhavananda's collection of talks published under the title Realizing God. And we're in the middle of one of his talks, and we'll begin here. God is within us, like a magnet drawing us. You know, one name for God is Hari, which means one who steals hearts. Another Sanskrit word is Madhava, the sweet one. That magnet is drawing us all the time, but the point of the needle is covered with dirt and dust, so it does not feel the attraction of the magnet. Therefore, as Sri Ramakrishna said, weep, weep, weep for God. Let your tears wash the dirt and dust off the needle of your mind. Then you will feel the drawing of the magnet. And this is the testimony of saint after saint, that it was their tears of longing, of yearning, that finally allowed them to have an intimate relationship with the divine presence. When we are in ignorance and only hear about grace, the thought comes to our mind that it comes from a personal being. So God is personal. But to those who do not believe in God, but who do believe in the impersonal absolute reality, Atman Brahman, how can the impersonal have any grace? From our standpoint of ignorance, we consider it something mechanical. I'm going to repeat that. From our standpoint of ignorance, we consider it something mechanical. I had one student who said she believed in the impersonal God. When I asked her to give me some idea of the impersonal reality, she said, it is power. I said, very good, but how does that power express itself? Oh, like electricity. You see, we can't conceive of it. But here again, let me point out that whatever conception or idea you have of God you have, but here again, let me point out that whatever conception or idea of God you have, if you sincerely believe it, if you sincerely believe in it, it is real. I'm going to repeat that, and then we're going to discuss it a little. But here again, let me point out that whatever conception or idea of God you have, if you sincerely believe in it, it is real. Why? Because there is only one reality. There is only one presence, living presence. As Swami Vivekananda points out in his talks collected as Jnana Yoga, the book Jnana Yoga, he points out the logical impossibility of there being two. There can be only one. So no matter what your mind has conceived, what the Swami is saying, no matter what your mind has conceived as God or the divine being or the living presence, whatever it is that you call it, however it is you think of it, as the Swami said, if you sincerely believe in it, it is real. And furthermore, it will continue to manifest itself within you so that your understanding becomes greater and greater. Now, before we go ahead, because this is such a key point, your conception of God, sincerely believed in, is a reality. So, is there any question or discussion or comment? Please. This is how we do the art of practicing the art of spirituality together. So it all seems clear to everyone?
Well, I would say, Brother Shankara, that it's as a man thinketh, so he is.
Yes.
It's your thoughts, because your thoughts create this whole reality. So if you have fear thoughts, then that's what you're going to project. The thoughts are an outward picture of an inward condition. So it's reflecting back to us our perception, our thoughts of what's inside.
Precisely, Michele. Forgive the masculine pronoun, considering who wrote it and when he wrote it. But Goethe said, a man sees in the world what he carries in his heart. So we can translate that and just make it less gender specific. A person sees in the world what they carry in their heart. If you carry a sincere image, a sincere conception of God in your heart, that is a reality for you. You see that in your world. Thank you, Michele. Anything else from anyone? All right, we'll go on then. Let me point out that whatever conception or idea of God you have, if you sincerely believe in it, it is real. The image of God comes to you according to your growth and understanding. Even if you have no idea or conception of God, seek and pray, saying, I do not know if you exist. I do not know what you are. Whatever and whoever you are, please reveal yourself to me. I cannot live without the ultimate reality. And of course, that is this ache, this yearning that arises in us that causes us to spend our time as we are now on a Saturday morning. Whoever you are, please reveal yourself to me. I cannot live without the ultimate reality. You know, his presence is felt in every human heart. You are a conscious being. Whose consciousness is it? That's the elemental question. You are a conscious being. Whose consciousness is it? Of course, you are not conscious of that consciousness. You are only conscious of the contents of your consciousness. Now, this is such an elemental idea also. We're not aware of our consciousness. We're only aware of the contents of our consciousness until we begin to practice do our spiritual practices. Then we become that witness presence that sees, these are the contents of my consciousness. And you begin to be able to answer the question, who is conscious? Whose consciousness is it? It is a consciousness behind. So all these things that are in as contents in your waking awareness, your active subconscious, and then later on you become aware of your latent subconscious. the contents of each of those levels. It is this change of self-identification that comes through spiritual practice. I am not the mind, I am not the body. This is something that is happening in my presence. The mind and its contents and all those three levels that I talked about, and the body with all of its activities, desires, vicissitudes. This is all something that is happening in your presence. So it is not that the mind and its contents is a reality. The reason it's not a reality, it's a transitory reality, but it's not an ultimate reality because it's constantly changing, as is your body, constantly changing. So we begin to be aware that I am the witness of these changes in the mind and the body. I am the witness. I am that. If you remove the contents of consciousness, there is God. One way of removing them, of course, is to recognize them, and so then you can release your attachment to them. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that a policeman with a bullseye lantern in the dark sees everybody, but no one sees him. Imagine a bullseye lantern is a lantern that focuses its rays only outward, like a flashlight. A policeman with a bullseye lantern in the dark sees everybody, but nobody sees him. Similarly, God within, pure consciousness, is like that bullseye lantern, which we see, know. Excuse me, I'm having real trouble changing pages here. It's really maddening. Sri Ramakrishna used to say that a policeman with a bullseye lantern in the dark sees everybody, but nobody sees him. Similarly, God within, pure consciousness, is like that bullseye lantern with which we see, know, and cognize every object. But we don't know that pure consciousness. So Sri Ramakrishna said, you have to tell the policeman, I want to look at your face. Please turn your bullseye lantern upon your face. So you can imagine, we've all seen this at Halloween, actually. Someone comes to the door in the dark and they hold the flashlight under their face and it looks kind of spooky and eerie because of the shadows and all. But that's what he's saying, you know. So if they just held it a bit in front of their face rather than just under their face, it wouldn't be spooky like that. But that's what Sri Ramakrishna says. So that's when you begin to identify with that light of the lantern as the witness consciousness. Oh, I see. So if there is divine grace, what need is there of self-effort? So if there is divine grace, what need is there of self-effort? The religions of Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism believe in divine grace, but we find Buddha did not say anything about it. He exhorts us to struggle, to strive. You see, Buddha was very practical. His point was this: if you follow these principles, if you struggle, you will know for yourselves whether God is or is not. Follow the methods and principles and see for yourself. And of course, that is the method basically of teaching here. What's taught is the principles and practices of God realization according to the paths already established for us. And so as you tread these paths according to your temperament, as the Swami says, You will know for yourselves whether God is or is not. Follow the methods and practices and see for yourself. We think God is way above, somewhere beyond, and that grace comes from there. But the fact is, God is within, dwelling there as pure consciousness. We are conscious of objects and things, but by what power? We are conscious of objects and things by what power? The power of God that dwells within as pure consciousness. That's what allows us to recognize anything. We are not aware of that. We're aware only of the light that is thrown upon objects and things, the light of consciousness. The Swami, speaking to the congregation in front of him, says, I see you before me. Whose power is that? The power of God. I am conscious. Whose power is that? The power of God. I am conscious. Whose power is it? The power of God. When I am asleep, there is that consciousness also. When I wake up, I am the same person. I know I had a wonderful rest. That pure consciousness of God is always present, which is why we have a sweet and restorative rest, is because everything that stood in the way of our experiencing that pure consciousness has gone to sleep. But the pure consciousness has not gone to sleep. And so we feel it, though we don't know it. We don't know that we're experiencing it. As St. Augustine said, God is the circle whose center is everywhere, but whose circumference is nowhere. In other words, infinite. Center is everywhere, but whose circumference is nowhere. In other words, his center is in you, in me, in everyone. We are all living in that one center. We are many forms, yes, but as the Upanishads explain, as air, though one, takes the shape of every object it enters. Now let's just hold that image in our mind. As air takes the shape of every object it enters, so the self, though one, takes the shape of every object in which it dwells. That's from the Katha Upanishad. I'm going to repeat that. As air, though one, if we think about the air, there's no break in it anywhere. There's no separation between this air and that air. Even though we may shut a door, there's still no break. As air, though one, takes the shape of every object it enters, so the self, though one, takes the shape of every object in which it dwells. So let's stop there and just take a moment to see if there's any comments or questions. We're doing fine in terms of time. Any comments or questions about this oneness that takes the shape of everything? This is what's meant by omnipresence. Omnipresence. We hear that word, but we really don't often think about what it really means. The being is. So it's a verb not a noun.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
if it's omnipresent and it's oneness and it takes the shape, then wouldn't that mean also then that everything that has a shape and a form within this of your perception within the solution, then you have to see the divinity within that shape and the form.
That's the ideal. And that only comes through spiritual practice. But yes, that's true. And the saints do see that. Though they recognize that there is, that shape takes dark forms, evil forms, as well as bright and holy forms.
So if, let's see, you see a ravenous tiger coming after you. So there's still God within the divinity within the tiger, but you have to also use your intellect and get away from that tiger too, right?
Yes. As a matter of fact, Sri Ramakrishna used that precise example. Yes, there's God in the tiger, but that does not mean you embrace the tiger. The tiger will eat you up. He tells the story of the mad elephant. A holy man had students. The students were taught that divinity exists. Divinity is, and therefore is within everything. And so one of his students was walking in a lane, a narrow lane, and he hears a voice calling from around the corner in the lane, mad elephant, get out of the way, get out of the way. And he sees the elephant coming around the corner and he thinks, well, my teacher told me that everything is the divine, so I don't need to bother about this. This is the divine. And so the mad elephant picks the man up with his trunk and throws him aside, knocks him unconscious. So the crowd runs to the holy man and says, your disciple has been knocked unconscious by a mad elephant. And so the holy man comes and gently brings his disciple back to consciousness. And he says, what happened? Well, the disciple says, this mad elephant came around the corner here, and I thought, well, the holy man told me that everything is the divinity, everything is the divine presence, so there's nothing for me to worry about. And so I didn't, and the elephant picked me up and put me in this condition. And the spiritual teacher said, oh, you foolish fellow. Yes, the divinity exists in everything. But why did you not listen to the divinity in the Mahut, the one on the elephant that was saying, mad elephant, get out of the way. So we have to use our, as you said, Michele, we have to use our intellect. We can't just say, oh, well, it exists in everything, so there's nothing for me to worry about. You use the example of a tiger, the metaphor of a tiger, absolutely. And we encounter tigers in the world in human form.
Right. So that would be also like we all have people, businesses, even if you're retired, there's still life still on this illusionary world continues. So you have to have discrimination even, I guess, with a business partner or on whether, because they're you have to forgive them, but you have to have the intellect to see past the form to what they're
Yes.
really trying to interpret, right? And then
So
you have to.
this is why we look at people's actions rather than what they say. What do they actually do? The wicked person is very prone to saying one thing and doing another. And so we have to be very careful with the wicked people in the world. And we slowly and slowly withdraw. Through prayer, we say to the Divine Presence, oh, make my life more simple. Make my life less complicated so I don't have to involve myself with these things. And that prayer, slowly and slowly, will be answered. And so then you find that the company you keep changes and, in a manner of speaking, improves. That you spend more time in holy company and less time in the company of people who have other motivations and perform other kinds of actions.
Thank you. And so that would include then, that would include having less drama. So you're saying as you evolve, or like Jacob's ladder, go up the ladder, then you have the less drama. But it's like Ramakrishna, he could see all the many different plays and the forms going on around him.
Yes, and some people he would not speak to.
Right, or he wouldn't drink the water from the glass that they would bring because of the frequency, the tone, right? And it's, so we're going back to thoughts, that it's your thoughts, the frequency, because even if you don't say anything, the person getting the glass of water, the thoughts weren't of a pure level, intent.
Michele, the physicists tell us, and this is the great miracle, there is nothing in universe except vibration. And so this incredible, miraculous machine, this action and experience suit, this world machine that we inhabit, turns that vibration into the reality that we perceive. If we are more and more spiritually advanced, we are more and more sensitive to the quality of the vibrations around us. And just exactly as you said, Sri Ramakrishna would not drink the water from the glass because of the vibration that was inherent in the water in the glass because of who was presented it. And all of their thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and intentions were in that water. So it's really quite something for us to study with the modern physicists and those who study perception based on their own insights and also what the physicists say. There is nothing but vibration. And it is this incredible machine that we inhabit that allows us to turn that vibration into the reality that we perceive. And based on our memories and our predispositions, our samskaras, we see a particular world that has a lot in common with other people's, but is not identical by any manner of means.
So since everything is vibration, is this is a question because we're talking about form and the perception of form. So what did sound, did frequency, did tone come first before light? Or is actual sound faster than light? Sorry for the question.
No, that's fine. That's a very interesting question. According to the scriptures, both Judeo-Christian and I don't know what it says in Islam, but Judeo-Christian and from Sanatana Dharma, commonly called Hinduism, first there was the sound, Om. Now that is a sound beyond description. It is so vast and so complex. So it's the fact that it came into existence brought everything else into existence.
So, because in
the
heaven,
beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God.
because there's only oneness, as you were saying. So then through then it created, like you could say, the sun.
It created that which emits light, yes.
And then, so heaven just extends itself, right? It's oneness. It just constantly extends itself.
Yes, it's called anti-entropy. Study the term anti-entropy if you don't already know it. The tendency of creation is to become more and more complex, more and more vast, and more specialized. So in the beginning, there was something that the scientists called plasma. Plasma is not a thing. Plasma is a state of energy that is so hot. I mean, it is beyond any measurement we have of hotness, the primordial plasma. As it cooled, and you can say it was Om that produced this plasma, so to speak. This is very dicey waters we're in here because language does not capture it. But when the Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic egg, in which all of this subtle energy had been complexifying and creating all the subtle forms that were later to become the gross forms, when it burst, as Stephen Hawking remarked, there was only information, the information from which everything was created. And so this plasma, hot beyond any ability of our minds to conceive of it, slowly and slowly over unimaginable lengths of time, cooled. And we can still measure that background radiation. We have devised instruments, amplification of our senses, to measure that background radiation. That's what's called now rather than plasma. But as it cooled, it became first the elementary particles. We call them quarks, gluons, all these names we have for these. And the bosons. Among the bosons was one that Higgs called the boson that by its existence and its combination with other particles gives them mass. And so the first mass was the hydrogen particle, the first aggregation. One neutron, one electron. There was there still is a vast amount of this hydrogen in the universe. it slowly, because of the mass brings with it gravity, it slowly fell together and the first stars formed. Slowly and slowly, groups of stars formed. And in the beginning, and this is just amazing, in the beginning, the stars grouping together in clusters, the oldest one exploded. And so like a string of firecrackers exploding, the huge pressure wave that was generated by this nova or supernova caused other stars to explode. And so helium, oxygen, so immediately there was both hydrogen and oxygen, and so there was water. I don't want to take up the rest of the hour following this through, but if you read about it, you can see the creative artistry of divine presence, the immense artistry. And if you want to read some poetry about this great artistry, read John O'Donohoe. It's spelled Donahue, pronounced in Irish, Donahoe. He writes of the great, he was a Catholic priest for 19 years and then left the priesthood and went off on his own spiritual quest and became an amazing human being. He's now left the body, but his work is there. Anamkara is one of his books, A-N-N-A-M or A-N-A-M, I'm not sure how many ends, Anamkara, which means love of the soul or the soul's love. So this is why the bhaktas, particularly the bhaktas, those who follow the devotional path, who look beyond the superficial to the power and the glory of the divine presence, become so reverent and so loving of the divine presence, because it's just astounding what, as limited as our minds are, we can still have a great appreciation for the incredible love and creative artistry of the divine presence. And again, if you want to read more about that, you can read the writings of Julian of Norwich. Julian of Norwich, spelled, they pronounced Norwich. Julian, it was a woman. She was an anchorite, that is to say, a nun who lived apart from everyone else in a small room. And she invited Christ to explain everything to her. What she wrote is wonderful, wonderful beyond all description. That was certainly a long answer to your remark or question, Michele, but there it is.
Well, you answered it, so, but because we were speaking of form, and so everything is, it's coming out of frequency, tone, vibration, and into form, and Thank you. And then I didn't know that about her in the small room, so I'll have to look into that, because Holy Mother, you know, had such a small room also.
Yes.
Thank you.
Holy Mother was, you know, Julian of Norwich is not regarded as an incarnation as Mother is, but she certainly was an illumined soul. And form is the remarkable thing is that we living beings are what create form. For there is no such thing as form in universe. We create it, we project it. It's not inherently there.
So you're saying form is part of the illusion?
Oh, absolutely. Name and form are the illusion. Name and form is just another way of saying the illusion.
So nothing's so blinding as perception of form?
Well, that's one way to think about it. That's an interesting way to say it. But what we can do is see in the form the creative power that produced it. That is to say, the vibration that we perceive as a tree is part of the creative artistry of the divine presence. And so form can blind us, or we can see the divine presence in the cooperation between our being, our witness being, and this incredible translation machine that we're in that translates pure vibration, as Vashishta said to Rama. Everything that you see, everything that you perceive in any way is nothing more than a vibration of consciousness. So we are, our action and experience suit, our world machine, is, its purpose is to create and sustain name and form. And if you want to read about why and what ultimately becomes of us when we come to the end of this adventure, read the last 4 pages of Swami Vivekananda's book, Raja Yoga. It's the only book that he wrote. Everything else, he wrote letters, but he wrote no other book. It's the only book that he wrote. And it's, in many ways, it's very poetic. And those last 4 pages are especially poetic and explain what the purpose of this action and experience suit is, who created it and why, and what happens when we come to the end of its necessity. It's a beautiful, beautiful poetic explanation. When we talk about Raja Yoga, which will be in November, I'll doubtless read those 4 pages in one of the talks during that, in November when we talk about Raja Yoga. But in the meantime, you can find them easily online. And if you don't have a copy of Swami Vivekananda's complete works as a PDF, just send me an email and I'll send it to you. Michele, thank you for those wonderful comments and questions and remarks.
Thank you.
This is the kind of discussion. I hope everyone else gain something from that. But it is a fact that this suit that we wear is a machine for translating vibration into the apparent reality that we experience. It's astounding. And studying it will yield reverence. Anything else before we read on?
Yes. I'd like to go back to the story you told about the elephant and the man and the saint.
Mm-hmm.
But the elephant throwing him. I was looking at that, and we think of, well, maybe that was supposed to happen for the benefit of the man that was thrown and all of the people that knew about it and observed it. But it seems that we put a negative connotation to it, and we think of it as a negative thing. But if you really look at it, those kind of things, I believe, happen because they're supposed to happen. We put a negative connotation to it, but we all benefit from it in the long run. And I'd like to hear you talk about that particular idea.
All right, Robert, I'll do it. Yes, indeed. All of what you said is true. This man needed to have that lesson. And those people who witnessed it also learned from it, as we can learn from the experiences of others. To put a negative connotation on it is inappropriate. And if I seem to do that, that was not the point. The point is, underneath this metaphorical story, there's the story of our levels of awareness. We have within us the ability to simply, uncritically apply the principles we're taught, as this man did. There's divinity in everything. Therefore, I have no reason to fear a mad elephant. That's an uncritical application of the principle that he'd been taught by his teacher. But with the grace of our mind, our intellect, our buddhi, we also have something that in Western terms is often called our conscience. And our conscience says, no, don't do that. Or do this in response to the situation. Alarmingly, as children, by the example of our parents, we are often taught to ignore our conscience. We see them ignore their conscience. We see them not tell the truth, not behave in the way that they teach us. And so we too learn to ignore that still small voice within us. That still small voice is metaphorized in the story of the elephant as the Mahut God, the divine presence in the form of the man who had lost control of the elephant because the elephant had lost its temper and lost its composure and become a mad elephant. We become a mad elephant, and our conscience is trying to say, no, trying to get control again and may, if we have wisdom, warn others, don't try and talk to me today. I'm in a really bad mood. So you're right, we should not put a negative connotation on it. We need to understand it. And the reason it seems to have a negative connotation is the man had a difficult experience because he was uncritical in his application of these spiritual principles. Does that get it? Is that a yes? Robert?
You're muted, Robert. We can't hear you.
Yeah, Robert has muted himself. We can't hear him anymore. All right.
Oh, not really. It kind of, you see, that example that you gave in that story told of what happens to all of us every day in our day-to-day lives.
Yes.
Yeah, that was just one snippet of what happened. And if we could come up with the answer or a way to deal with that situation, we could make our lives and other people's lives much more beneficial, much more effective.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Then that's what Krishna means when he says in the Gita, yoga, union with the divine presence and detachment from our illusory or delusional presence. He says yoga is the breaking of contact with pain. So our own experience becomes less painful. And because of that, we become this lighthouse of radiance that shines out into the world and is beneficial to others. You're absolutely right.
And it seems that we do this out of habit and out of fear.
Yes. That's what I mean by the uncritical application. Habit, and of course, one of the reasons we persist in our habits is because we're afraid of what will happen if we...
Right, and we're unconscious.
Yes. That unconsciousness is one of the greatest characteristics of that darkness of our unconsciousness is one of the greatest characteristics of our ignorance.
Yeah, we're on automatic.
Yeah, exactly. And as long as we're on automatic, we're headed for trouble.
Yeah, we don't think each situation through
right.
as we're confronted with it. We just go on automatic.
We react rather than act.
Yeah, right.
Good, Robert. That was wonderful. Anybody else? Okay, we'll read on. The self, though one, takes the shape of every object in which it dwells. It is that Atman, that pure consciousness, present everywhere, which is one with immortal life and abiding bliss, Satchidananda. It is that pure consciousness, present everywhere, which is one with immortal life and abiding bliss, Satchidananda. Such is the experience of the great mystics. They open their eyes and see that pure consciousness everywhere. Through spiritual practices, one attains the illumined knowledge of God. Through spiritual practices, one attains the illumined knowledge of God. But remember, I am quoting the words of my master. God is not a commodity like potatoes and onions that you can buy at a price. God is not a commodity that you can buy with so much japam and so much meditation. But practice meditation, go on practicing, and then you find the grace. Because you have raised your sails through the practice of japam and meditation and prayer and whatever else your spiritual practices are, you've raised your sails. Then you feel the wind of grace blowing. And as you have many kinds of experiences, and as you have any kind of experience, that is spiritual experience, and as you have any kind of experience, any kind of vision, immediately there arises the thought, grace, grace, grace. When one would tell Swami Swahananda of some experience or vision, he would say, oh, what a wonderful gift. What a wonderful gift. The gift of grace. He wasn't saying the word, but that's what he meant. When longing comes, you feel that grace. And then you realize that you could not even think of God, meditate upon God, or chant the name of God without his grace. Whose grace? The grace that exists within you. It is the time, it is the right time when you begin to feel these thoughts, have these feelings, have this yearning. It is because it's the right time for you to go forward. So that's what's meant here by grace. There is a wrong understanding that if you read the scriptures regularly, you will realize God, or will at least find after death that you go somewhere. But we have a saying that when the husking machine goes to heaven, what will it do but husk? That's no doubt a Bengali saying. So if you're still a husking machine, what does a husking machine do? A husking machine is simply something that changes one thing from one form into another. It may improve things. It takes something that would not be edible in its unhusked form and turns it into something edible in its husked form. But it's still just changing things from one form to another. So that's not realization, of course. When the husking machine goes to heaven, what will it do but husk? When gossipy people go to heaven, what will they do? Gossip. Grace is a psychological experience. It comes in many different ways. For instance, while you are trying to meditate and you can't even make japam because you are restless for some reason, suddenly your whole body becomes soothed and you become calm. And then you feel the grace. Those of you who have meditated long enough know that at times your mind goes down deep and you feel choked, as it were, because of the clinging to life. You feel as if you're going to die. So you come up. But then there comes another time when you are struck by thunder, as it were, and you are afraid. But there is no time to be afraid. You're in another world. So that Swami is trying to make sense for us of things that happen to us when we do our spiritual practices. Sometimes when we're doing practice, it'll come to you in many different ways. But whatever it is that you experience, you find you run away from it rather than let it go on and take you. And so the Swami says there are other times when something happens. He compares it to thunder, which probably is the way he experiences it or knows of that experience. And there's no time to be afraid or run away. You're simply, as he said, you're in another world. And then you can see a form, or you may not see any form, but an ocean of light and waves of bliss striking you. And the whole universe disappears. What replaces it? As long as you are still in the state of experiencing, what replaces it is what's called savikalpa samadhi. There's only the divine presence of which you feel a part. Your experience is that you're a part of that, but it's an experience. If the universe truly disappears in the sense that your experiencing aspect disappears with it, that's nirvikalpa samadhi, and nothing can be said about that. All realized souls admit that realization comes through divine grace, and they will point out that the struggles we have to make are also through divine grace, which is what you were pointing out, Robert. You know, that the man's experience with the elephant, it's also divine grace. He and others learned from that experience. So it was grace. It wasn't a bad thing that happened, though that it was doubtless painful. To be knocked unconscious, you receive quite a blow. You see at that level of consciousness, everything is seen as divine grace. One time, a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna told me, you know, I passed through a stage when every step I took, I felt I passed through a stage when every step I took, I felt was through the power, the grace of God. What a state to be in. You know, I passed through a stage where every step I took, I felt was through the power, the grace of God. What we call ego was completely missing. The fact is, God is personal and God is impersonal, but not the way you and I may think of God being personal like a human being, nor impersonal like an automaton or an abstraction. All the definition that can be given is that he is endowed with all the blessed divine qualities, or impersonal, is beyond all attributes. All the definition that can be given is that he is endowed with all the blessed divine qualities, or if impersonal, is beyond all attributes. No matter how you think of God, it is anthropomorphic. Of course, that's all we know. That's all we know. But it doesn't matter. And we can take the Swami so very seriously when he says that. But that doesn't matter. No matter how you call on him, he will reveal himself to you. And until he reveals himself to you, you really cannot conceive of him. But try to think of God in your own way. You know, the Upanishads say there are 33 million gods, because each one of us conceives of the divine differently. And that was when there were only 33 million people. Now there are about 7 billion gods. The ultimate experience is that whatever is perceived or experienced is none other than God. And we can hold that, we can take a stand for that even before we actually experience it. We can say, I believe, I have a working faith that this is true. The ultimate experience is that whatever is perceived or experienced is nothing other than God. So we can have that as an operating principle. And it's transformative if we do. Wherever your eyes fall, there is God. You see nothing but God. So I'll repeat that last again. That was the end of the talk. The ultimate experience is that whatever is perceived or experienced is none other than God. Wherever your eyes fall, there is God. You see nothing but God. So it's 12:07, but there's time if anyone has any comments or questions.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. I really enjoyed this talk.
Good, good, good. Well, the Swami is, one of the wonderful things about this book is it's like sitting at his knee and listening to him talk. He's so conversational. Thank you, Aaron. That's just the way I feel too. Anyone else? Anything? Okay, well, we'll wind it up there then.
Hari Om Shankaraji.
Yes, Balakrishna.
Yeah. Because I'm thinking about it, what Robert said and what is the discussion about. I think it is such a wonderful thing because what Robert is saying, the Hinduism says that accept everything that comes in front of you as a prasad from God.
Yes.
And this is what happened even, Ramachandra, who is the teacher for Mahatma Gandhi, when one of the questions was, that is number 20th question, when you see a snake, are you going to run away? Are you going to stay there, let it bite? And Sri Ramachandra said, I will stay there, let it bite. So I think it all depends upon how much grace or how much spiritual, at what, on the ladder of spirituality, at what stage you are. And also it is all the grace. I think, because after a certain point, I don't think all these realized people may not use the intellect. Of course, they do use the intellect, but they accept everything. Maybe that's why when one of the times, I think Sri Ramakrishna was going through, he saw a snake and it was hissing on everybody and scaring everybody. And Sri Ramakrishna said, don't bite, just hiss to scare them out. So, that is the state, these realized people are. I mean, I'm just thinking loud, that's all.
Yes, well, thank you, Balakrishna. That's all very appropriate, very appropriate. The fact of the matter is, if we follow the instructions of Sri Krishna in chapter 3 of Bhagavad Gita, and we offer everything to him, or if our Ishta Devata is goddess to her. If we offer everything, without exception, if we offer everything to him or her, then we must accept whatever happens to us, whatever the results, whatever the fruits are of all of our actions and all of our thoughts and all of our perceptions, all of those fruits we must accept as prasad. They are, and as Robert said, they are to be learned from, they are to be accepted and assimilated in that spirit. So it just depends on whether we're willing, and this is what we'll talk about next month, karma yoga. What does it mean to exist in this state where what we do is offer everything to the divine presence, however we conceive of it, and then accept everything that comes back to us in the way of experiences and perceptions, anything that arises within us and happens to us, we accept as the gift of the God to whom we offered, God or goddess. So that thank you, Balakrishna, you're absolutely right.
And we can offer like tasks we even hate doing, such as paying taxes, for example, to God.
Absolutely, Aaron. Absolutely. As Swami Prabhavananda said, there was a woman, this was in the 1940s, she had lived very, very simply and had a very simple job. But because of the war, she had gotten a much better job. And so she was making much more money. And she asked the Swami, Swami, should I have a bank account? Should I, now that I have all this money, which, by our standards still wasn't much, but it was a lot to her. She said, should I have a bank account? And he said, yes, have plenty bank account. But just remember, the money is not yours, it's Sri Ramakrishna's. It is the Lord's. And so paying our taxes, Christ was very, very explicit about this. Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and unto the Lord what is the Lord's. But if we look beyond and behind what he's saying, it's all the Lord's. So we pay our taxes, we render unto Caesar, and but definitely offer that action. Thanks, Aaron, for that question. That makes it very practical.
The fruits are easy for us to accept. It's the thorns that we have a problem with.
Oh, the thorns are the thorns are the fruits too, dear Robert. There's sweet fruits and bitter fruits. There's easy path and then the thorny path, and we walk it all.
But I think we have to accept them as thorns. We can't pretend that they're fruits. We have to be real about this. We have to accept those fruits. That's easy. We do that. But those thorns, we have to accept them too. And once we are able to accept them, we look into it. We can find a gift that they have hidden underneath.
All right. So we have to accept, as you say, both the fruits, which you're making a differentiation between the words fruits like something good to eat and thorns. Yes, we have to accept everything that comes back to us as a gift from the Lord, and assimilate it Sometimes it's very difficult. Sometimes it's very difficult to accept it as a gift and assimilate it.
Yes, I agree with it, Brother Shankara. It is very difficult. It takes very high level of spiritual involvement to surrender everything. It's like jnana yoga is needed as to practice the highest level of karma yoga. You know, you have to have a lot of discrimination.
Okay.
Yes. So they go hand in hand, you know, the jnana yoga of discrimination and dispassion to have the karma yoga, highest level of karma yoga, to surrender everything to God. Just like Girish Ghosh, you know, he gave his power of attorney to Sri Ramakrishna. It's a good
Yes.
example. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And then it completely transformed his life.
Yes.
Well said, Nira.
Brother Shankara, where could I find the explanation that you gave from physics point of view, the creation that you explained so well, the progression of creation?
Oh my goodness, Nira, this is the result of years of reading of many different publications, many different books and articles. You can go online on YouTube and put in Introduction to Astrophysics.
Okay.
Introduction to Astrophysics. And be prepared to have it be kind of slow going in the beginning. You know, you have to learn a different vocabulary. So it's, but I've given a summary view translated into simple English of what are very, just do what I said. Introduction to Astrophysics, and see what you find, and stay in touch with me about it.
Okay, thank you.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
This is Vijay. I have a question.
Yes.
Long time ago, more than once, you and I talked about a topic, and your answer was that Swami says people have a right to their pain
and suffering.
To the suffering. Somehow, it has not really come home to me. Can you help me?
What the Swami said, this was Swami Prabhavananda, people have a right to their pain and suffering. Do not try to remove it. Sustain and comfort. The reason we are not to try to remove their pain and suffering, first of all, we're so ignorant that we would not know how to go about it properly. This is why there are trained psychologists, psychotherapists, and trained social workers that can help people understand their pain and suffering. But without that training, we're just fumbling in the dark. So first, that's on a practical level. We don't know how to remove their pain and suffering. We don't know how to help them understand it in such a way that they can bear it or even benefit from it. But behind and beyond that is the idea that we learn through our pain and suffering. Our pain and suffering is a consequence of our karma. Our karma is there for us because there is something for us yet to know understand, and resolve. This is why Holy Mother said that if you have progressed by doing your spiritual practices, destiny herself will strike from the book of record what is written there about you, and you won't have to suffer some truly painful karma because you've learned a lesson already that would have been taught to you by that karma. So we are not to remove other people's pain and suffering because this is a very integral part of their growth and learning experience. We will not understand it. Even the most skillful psychologists and psychotherapists will tell you that they do not necessarily understand everything that is going on with a human being that is in intense suffering. But they can, through their training, help the other person, help the person who is suffering understand it. So in that way, they are sustaining and comforting the person. For us, sustaining and comforting often, most often means providing some emotional support or material support. Emotional support means just letting that person know that you care about them, that you love them, that you are praying for them, that you wish them well. And then if they're in need of money and you can spare the money, then you help sustain them by giving them some money. You have to be careful about this, though, because one of the ways that people get themselves into trouble, the person who is suffering, is to become dependent on others by, as Michele said, practicing their drama in their presence and saying, help me, so that they do not themselves have to learn to sustain themselves. So it's a tricky thing about giving money. And that's about as much as I have to offer about that. BJ, is that helpful?
Yes, Brother Shankara, you have offered a lot. It is helpful. And at the same time, what I'm understanding from this good, very nice explanation from you is that Swami is not saying that I not help anyone. What he's saying is that I need to know my limitations of what I can offer and stay within my limitations. And
Yes.
case in example being, if somebody has faith in me, and this is a real life example, some lady who is very unhappy in her married life, wanted to end her life, and very difficult task to convince a person not to do so. So the best part was that to the extent the person has faith in me, to be able to convince the person that you have young children, don't make the decision today. You'll have time to make a decision some other day. Right now, live for the sake of your children, at least till such time that they are grown up enough to be on their own. And he accepted it.
Well,
What I'm saying is
that was
that
wise. Yeah. Now,
this is not my area. I'm not a psychotherapist.
well, but Vijay, before you go on, let's say you did not try to get to the cause of her pain and suffering that was causing her to want to commit suicide. You didn't try to do that. That's good, because as you say, you're not trained in that. What you did is you gave her, you replaced a lower samskara that of desiring to end her life, with a higher samskara of some reason to maintain her life. And so that's good. Now, the rest of the details of this story, Vijay, probably are, what else happened?
So essentially what I want to know is that, am I doing something in line with what Swamiji meant, that people have a right to their suffering?
I just told you.
That came
Yes,
home. That came home very clear. Yes.
Yes, you did an appropriate thing by replacing a lower samskara with giving her the opportunity to adopt a higher samskara, to live for others rather than concern her about, not be so self-involved as to think only about herself. That was a very good thing to offer her.
Thank you for clarifying that, Brother Shankara.
Anything else from anyone? That was good, Vijay. All right. We'll end it there then. O beloved Lord, speech cannot hold thee nor mind, yet without thee we think not nor speak. Love, who art partial to none, we are equal before thy sight. Taker away of our pain, we salute thee, though we are blind. Come to the heart's dark cave and illumine, thou light of the light. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Hari Om Tat Sat. So, for those of you who wish, there's tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., Baal Shem Tov and the practice of love. Anything else from anyone? All right. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. Go in Mother's loving and protective embrace. May you be safe, healthy, and cheerful. Until tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Talk to you soon. Jai Ma.